My parents announced my sister would be moving into my apartment without asking. Update. I just got back from a business trip to find they changed my locks and moved her in while I was gone. Hi everyone. Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Thanks to you, we can keep sharing the most shocking family stories. Let's jump in. Original post. I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am, sitting in my own apartment at 2 a.m., wondering if I'm losing my mind or if my family has completely lost theirs. My name is Leon, I'm 29, and I've worked my ass off for everything I have. Growing up, my parents Julius and Tessa always made it clear that success meant independence. Stand on your own 2 feet, my father would say. Nobody owes you anything, my mother would add. I took those lessons to heart, got through college with loans and part-time jobs, and landed a decent position at a tech company 4 years ago. Last year, I finally saved enough for a down payment on a 2-bedroom apartment in a decent neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. The mortgage takes a chunk of my salary, but I budget carefully. The spare room serves as my home office, essential since I work from home twice a week. My sister Lila is 27 and, to put it diplomatically, has made different life choices. She dropped out of college twice, has bounced between retail jobs, and spent the last 3 years living with our parents while finding herself. I don't judge. Everyone moves at their own pace. But what happened last Sunday has me questioning everything. I was having dinner at my parents' house, a monthly tradition I've maintained despite the 40-minute drive. We were eating Mom's pot roast when Dad cleared his throat, his signature move before making announcements. Leon, we need to discuss your living situation, he said, cutting his meat with precision. I paused mid-chew. My living situation? That apartment is too much space for one person, Mom chimed in, refilling everyone's water glasses except mine, I noticed. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, it's excessive. I use the second room as an office, I said slowly, trying to understand where this was heading. You know I work from home sometimes. You can work from the kitchen table, Dad said dismissively. People did it for generations. Lila hadn't said a word, just pushed peas around her plate with unusual interest. What's this about? I asked directly. Lila needs to move out, Mom announced. She's been with us long enough. It's time she had some independence. Okay, I said carefully. There are lots of apartments available. I can help her look if... Don't be ridiculous, Dad interrupted. Why would she waste money on rent when you have an empty room? The silence that followed could have choked someone. I set down my fork deliberately, trying to process what I'd just heard. You want Lila to move into my apartment? Want is a strong word, Mom said. It's what's happening. Family helps family, Leon. You know this. When were you planning to ask me about this? My voice came out steadier than I felt. Ask. Dad's eyebrows rose. We're not asking. We're informing you. Lila will be moving in next weekend. No, I said simply. She won't. The explosion that followed was something to behold. Dad's face turned purple. Mom slammed her hand on the table, rattling dishes. They talked over each other, throwing around words like selfish, ungrateful, and disappointing. Through it all, Lila remained silent, studying her plate like it held the secrets of the universe. That apartment is mine, I said when they paused for breath. I pay the mortgage. My name is on the deed. You don't get to make decisions about my property. Property. Mom laughed bitterly. Is that what family means to you? Property rights. It means respecting boundaries, I replied. It means asking, not demanding. It means understanding that I'm an adult who makes his own choices. You're choosing to let your sister struggle when you have space, Dad said coldly. Remember that. I'm choosing to maintain my home as I see fit, I corrected. Lila is welcome to visit. She's not moving in. I left before dessert, their accusations following me to my car. Selfish rang in my ears during the entire drive home. Was I being unreasonable? I'd worked hard for my independence, saved every penny, sacrificed social outings and vacations to afford my own place. Now they expected me to hand over half of it without even the courtesy of a request? The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. They hadn't asked about rent contribution. They hadn't discussed house rules or duration. They simply decreed that my sister would be moving into my home, like I was still a child whose belongings could be redistributed at their whim. I've been getting texts all week. Mom sends guilt trips about family loyalty. Dad sends terse messages about disappointment. Extended family members, clearly given a one-sided story, send their own judgments. Aunt Patricia called me heartless. Cousin Marcus said I'd forgotten where I came from. But here's the thing, I haven't forgotten anything. I remember every double shift, every ramen dinner, every time I chose studying over socializing to build this life. I remember the lectures about independence, the pride in their voices when I got my job, their approval when I bought this apartment. Apparently, that approval came with invisible strings attached. Lila finally texted yesterday, "I didn't ask for this." I believed her, but it didn't change anything. Whether she asked or not, she hadn't refused either. She'd sat silent while our parents planned to commandeer my home. Now it's Friday night, and tomorrow is supposedly moving day. I've installed new locks, paranoid, maybe, but I put nothing past them at this point. I've sent a clear group text stating that Lila is not moving in and any attempt to do so will be considered trespassing. The response was swift and predictable. Dad called me dramatic. Mom said I was breaking her heart. Various relatives added their 2 cents about family values and selfishness. Am I wrong here? Should family automatically have access to your resources? Is maintaining boundaries really selfish, or is it self-preservation? I guess I'll find out tomorrow what lines they're willing to cross. Update 1. The Moving Day Ambush. I thought I was prepared. I thought changing the locks and setting clear boundaries would be enough. I severely underestimated my family's audacity. Saturday morning, I woke early, anxious about potential confrontation. By 9 a.m., when nothing had happened, I started to relax. Maybe they'd accepted my decision. Maybe rational thought had prevailed. I should have known better. Around 10 a.m., I got a call from James, my neighbor. "Hey Leon, just wanted to let you know there's a moving truck outside your building. Your family said you were expecting them." My blood froze. "They're there now." "Yeah, your parents and sister. They said you gave them keys." I hung up and raced home, breaking probably every traffic law in existence. The 20-minute drive took me 12. When I pulled up, I saw it all, a small moving truck, boxes stacked on the sidewalk, and my parents directing the operation like generals commanding troops. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded, jumping out of my car. Mom turned with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Oh good, you're here. You can help with the heavy boxes." "No boxes are going into my apartment," I said firmly. "I told you Lila isn't moving in." "Don't be dramatic," Dad said, lifting a box labeled kitchen. "It's happening whether you throw a tantrum or not." That's when I noticed Lila, standing by the truck, looking uncomfortable but still participating. She avoided my eyes when she spoke. "Leon, please. I just need some time to get on my feet." "Then ask me," I said directly to her. "Stop hiding behind Mom and Dad and ask me yourself." She fidgeted. "Can I stay with you for a while?" "No," I said simply. "Because this isn't asking. This is ambushing. You're here with a truck, with boxes packed, with our parents as enforcers. That's not a request. It's an invasion." "Invasion?" Mom's voice pitched high. "We're your family." "Family that apparently doesn't understand the word no," I replied, pulling out my phone. "You have 2 minutes to start loading that truck back up, or I'm calling the police." The explosion was immediate and volcanic. Dad stepped toward me aggressively. "You would call the police on your own family?" "I'll call them on trespassers," I corrected, already dialing but not hitting call yet. "Your choice." What followed was 15 minutes of verbal warfare. Every guilt trip in the book was deployed. Mom cried, dramatic, heaving sobs about how she'd failed as a mother to raise such a heartless son. Dad raged about respect and family values. Lila joined in, accusing me of abandoning her in her time of need. Neighbors started gathering, drawn by the commotion. Mr. Chen from 4B looked concerned. Jennifer from across the hall watched with obvious curiosity. The attention seemed to fuel my parents' performance. "Look what you're doing," Mom wailed. "Humiliating us in front of strangers." "You're humiliating yourselves," I responded. I said no. You showed up anyway. The consequences are on you. Finally, whether due to embarrassment or the threat of police involvement, they started loading boxes back into the truck. The retreat was accompanied by a steady stream of predictions about my future regret, my cold heart, and how they'd remember this betrayal. "You're making a mistake," Dad said as they prepared to leave. "Family is all you have in the end." "Then maybe family should treat each other with respect," I replied. They left, but the aftermath was swift and brutal. Within hours, my phone exploded with messages from extended family. The story they'd been told painted me as a monster who'd thrown his desperate sister onto the streets. My Uncle Robert called me shameful. My grandmother left a voicemail about how my deceased grandfather would be spinning in his grave. But here's what frustrates me most. Nobody asked for my side. Nobody questioned why a 27-year-old woman needed to move into her brother's apartment without his permission. Nobody wondered why my parents felt entitled to make decisions about property they didn't own. Sunday was quieter but tense. I spent the day second-guessing myself, wondering if I'd overreacted. Then I remembered the truck, the boxes, the assumption that my no was negotiable, and my resolve strengthened. Monday morning brought a new development. I woke to find a key broken off in my lock, the old key, apparently, that someone had tried to use despite the lock change. The security camera I'd installed after Saturday's incident showed my father at 6 a.m., trying to enter my apartment while I slept. That crossed a line I hadn't imagined they'd cross. I compiled the footage and sent a message to our family group chat. Attempting to break into my apartment is a crime. The next attempt will result in police involvement and a restraining order. This is not a negotiation. The response was immediate denial. Dad claimed he was trying to check on me because he was worried. Mom said I was paranoid and seeing threats where there was only concern. Lila remained notably silent. But I wasn't backing down. I'd worked too hard for my independence to have it stolen by people who confused family bonds with ownership rights. Update 2: 3 weeks of escalation. The 3 weeks following the moving truck incident tested every boundary I had. My family, apparently, viewed my resistance not as a firm boundary but as a challenge to overcome. It started with love bombing. Mom sent daily texts about family dinners I was missing. Dad forwarded job listings for Lila with messages about how she was trying so hard to improve. The messages were designed to make me feel guilty for maintaining my boundaries. When that didn't work, they escalated. I came home from work the following Tuesday to find my building super William, looking uncomfortable by my door. "Your mom was here," he said carefully. "Said there was a water leak in your apartment and she needed access to check on it." "There's no leak," I said, my jaw tightening. "I figured," he replied. "That's why I didn't let her in." But she was insistent. How insistent? William showed me a video on his phone. My mother, the woman who'd taught me about dignity and composure, was screaming at this poor man, threatening lawsuits, claiming emergency access rights she didn't have. It was mortifying. "I'm so sorry," I told him. "This won't happen again." "Look, I get family drama," he said kindly. "But if she comes back, I'll have to report it to building management." I sent the video to our family chat with a simple message: "This stops now." The response was predictable deflection. Mom claimed she was genuinely worried about water damage. Dad said I was making mountains out of molehills. Various relatives chimed in about how I was tearing the family apart. Then came the financial manipulation. That Friday, I received an email from my parents' lawyer. Yes, they involved a lawyer, suggesting that since they'd helped with my college expenses, they had a moral claim to influence over my property use. The letter was carefully worded to avoid actual legal claims while maximizing emotional manipulation. I forwarded it to my own lawyer, a friend from college named David who specialized in property law. His response was blunt: "This is legally meaningless but emotionally abusive. Document everything." So I did. Every text, every unexpected visit, every third-party flying monkey they sent my way got documented. The folder on my computer grew depressingly thick. Meanwhile, Lila had started her own campaign. She began showing up at my workplace during lunch, sitting in the lobby with tearful eyes where my coworkers could see. She never approached me directly. That would have triggered security, but her presence was a constant reminder of the family drama. My manager, Sarah, finally pulled me aside. "Is everything okay? I don't want to pry, but..." I gave her the abbreviated version. Her response surprised me. "My brother tried something similar when I inherited our grandmother's house. Stand your ground. It gets worse before it gets better, but it does get better." The third week brought what I thought was the nuclear option. I received a formal letter from my parents stating they were removing me from their will and all family trust funds unless I came to my senses and helped Lila. I stared at that letter for a long time. The inheritance wasn't insignificant. My parents had done well in real estate. But as I sat in my apartment, the apartment I'd earned through my own efforts, I realized something important. Their money had always come with strings. This was just the first time the strings were visible. I responded with my own formal letter, copied to the extended family. "I acknowledge your decision regarding your estate planning. Please understand that my decision regarding my property remains unchanged. I wish Lila success in finding appropriate accommodation that doesn't require coercing family members. I remain open to helping her search for apartments within her budget, reviewing rental applications, or providing references. I am not, however, opening my home to someone who participates in attempting to violate my clearly stated boundaries. If family means unconditional support, then surely it also means respecting each other's autonomy and decisions. I hope we can find a path forward that doesn't require threats or manipulation. The family response was split. Some doubled down on calling me selfish. But surprisingly, a few relatives reached out privately to say they understood. Cousin Jennifer admitted she'd been pressured to let Lila stay with her first but had also refused. Uncle Marcus confessed that Julius and Tessa had a history of boundary issues I'd been too young to notice before. These small validations meant everything during those dark weeks when I questioned my own sanity and decisions. Final update, 3 months later, the unthinkable escalation. I'm writing this from a hotel room, still in shock from what transpired over the last 72 hours. If someone had told me 3 months ago that standing up for my boundaries would lead here, I wouldn't have believed them. After my formal letter, things went deceptively quiet for about a month. No dramatic visits, no manipulation, just radio silence. I started to relax, thinking maybe they'd finally accepted my decision. I even reached out to Lila directly, offering to help her apartment hunt, but received no response. Life returned to a semblance of normal. Work was going well, I was sleeping better, and I'd started dating someone named Ashley who refreshingly came from a family that understood boundaries. I thought the worst was over. Last Thursday, I left for a 3-day business conference in Chicago. It was an important opportunity, potential promotion implications, and I'd been preparing for weeks. I posted nothing on social media about the trip, having learned to keep my movements private. But families have ways of knowing things. Saturday evening, as the conference was wrapping up, I got a call from James, my neighbor again. His voice was confused. "Hey man, did you change your locks again? Your key doesn't work." "What? Why do you have my key?" I asked, my stomach dropping. "You asked me to water your plants while you were gone. Remember? You gave me the spare last night." "James, I've been in Chicago since Thursday morning. I never gave you a key." The silence on his end was ominous. "Your sister said." "Oh shit. What did Lila say?" "She came by yesterday with your spare key, said you'd asked her to drop it off for me because you forgot before leaving. She seemed to know about your trip and your plants, so I didn't question it." My hands shook as the implications hit me. "James, can you check if anyone's in my apartment right now?" "Already walking there," he said. I heard his footsteps in the hallway through the phone. "Oh my God, Leon. There's furniture in the hallway." "Your furniture? Someone's moving your stuff out." I don't remember the Uber ride to the airport or the flight home. It's all a blur of rage and disbelief. I called the police from the airport, but they said without proof of forced entry or violence, it was a civil matter that would take time to resolve. When I finally arrived at my building at 2 a.m. Sunday morning, the sight that greeted me was surreal. The locks had been changed, professionally, not a hack job. When I peered through the window, I could see Lila's furniture in my living room. My office had been transformed into her bedroom. My belongings were either crammed into my bedroom or, as I discovered, in a storage unit whose location I didn't know. The security footage was the most insulting part. It showed my parents and Lila arriving Friday afternoon with a locksmith, claiming to be performing a wellness check after I'd supposedly threatened self-harm. The locksmith, believing their story, had changed the locks. Then they'd simply moved her in. I called my parents immediately. Mom answered on the third ring, her voice infuriatingly calm. "Hi, sweetie, how was your conference?" "You know damn well how it was," I snarled. "You broke into my apartment." "We did no such thing," she replied smoothly. "We were concerned about your mental health." The locksmith agreed it was necessary. And once we were inside, well, Lila needed somewhere to stay, and the apartment was just sitting there. "You committed a crime," I said, my voice shaking with rage. "You're going to undo this immediately, or I'm pressing charges." Dad's voice came on the line. They were clearly together, probably celebrating their victory. "Go ahead, call the police. We'll tell them about your mental health struggles, your threats of self-harm, how we were just protecting you and helping your sister. Who do you think they'll believe?" The calculated nature of it took my breath away. They'd created a paper trail, a narrative where they were concerned parents and I was unstable. I found out later they'd even called my workplace Friday, telling Sarah I was having a mental health crisis and might need time off. "I have no history of mental health issues," I said. "This won't work." "Don't you?" Mom asked sweetly. "What about those therapy sessions in college? The antidepressants you took senior year? We kept all those records, honey. For your own good. I'd gone to therapy during a stressful period in college. I'd taken medication briefly for situational depression after a bad breakup. Normal, healthy responses to life challenges that they were now weaponizing against me. If you pursue this, Dad added, we'll make sure everyone knows about your instability. Your job, your friends, any future partners. Is your apartment really worth your reputation? I hung up and called David, my lawyer. He was at my apartment within an hour despite it being 3 a.m., looking at documents, reviewing footage, building a case. They're good at this, he admitted grimly. They've created enough confusion to make immediate police action unlikely. But we can fight this. How long? I asked. To do it right. Weeks, maybe months. And Leon, it's going to get ugly. They're going to use every weapon they have. I spent Sunday in a hotel, trying to process what had happened. Lila had posted on Instagram from my apartment, thanking our parents for making this possible and being the best support system ever. The comments from family members praised my parents for their generosity and Lila for her fresh start. Nobody mentioned it was my apartment. The narrative was already being rewritten. Monday brought new revelations. Ashley called, confused and concerned. She'd received messages from my mother warning her that I was unstable and potentially dangerous. My workplace had received similar, concerned calls. My parents were systematically trying to destroy my life to force compliance. But here's the thing, they underestimated me. I hired a private investigator who discovered interesting facts. The locksmith they'd used, he'd lost his license 2 years ago for similar scams. The wellness check story? No official record existed. They'd also made a crucial mistake. They'd used my emergency credit card, which I'd foolishly left accessible, to pay for the locksmith and moving company, creating a paper trail of fraud. More importantly, Lila had been posting videos from inside my apartment, clearly showing my personal belongings, my mail, my family photos still on the walls. She was documenting her own crime in real time. As I write this, it's been 72 hours since I discovered the takeover. David has filed emergency injunctions. The police, now presented with evidence of fraud and false statements, are taking it seriously. My workplace, thankfully, sees through my parents' manipulation after I provided context. But the family reaction has been swift and brutal. I've received dozens of messages calling me heartless, selfish, a disappointment. My parents have promised to destroy me if I don't drop the legal action. They've sworn I'll never see them again if I pursue this. You know what? I'm okay with that. Because I've realized something important. This isn't about an apartment. It never was. It's about control, about their inability to see me as an autonomous adult, about their belief that family means ownership. Tomorrow, we go to court for an emergency eviction hearing. Lila has to face a judge and explain how she came to be living in an apartment she doesn't lease, doesn't own, and entered through deception. My parents have to explain their fraudulent wellness check and the financial crimes they committed. Will I get my apartment back? Probably. Will I ever have a relationship with my family again? Probably not. But I'll have something more valuable. My self-respect, my boundaries, and the knowledge that I didn't let anyone, not even family, steal the life I built for myself. Because here's what I've learned through all of this. Sometimes the price of maintaining your boundaries is losing people who never respected them in the first place. And sometimes, that's not a loss at all, it's freedom. The hotel room is quiet tonight, but it's a peaceful quiet. Tomorrow brings court, confrontation, and probably more family drama. But for tonight, I'm just a guy who refused to be bullied, even by those who claim to love him most. And despite everything, I don't regret a single decision. My home is mine. My life is mine. And anyone who can't respect that, family or not, has no place in either. Epilogue, 6 weeks after court. The emergency hearing was brutal but effective. The judge, after reviewing the evidence, was visibly disgusted by my parents' actions. The phrases unconscionable, fraudulent, and potentially criminal were used repeatedly. Lila was given 48 hours to vacate, and my parents were ordered to pay for all damages, lock changes, and my legal fees. The family explosion was nuclear. I'm now dead to about 60% of my extended family. The other 40% has quietly reached out with their own horror stories about my parents' manipulations over the years. Lila moved back with our parents, but not before sending me a long email about how I'd ruined her life and chosen property over blood. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. My apartment has been restored, but it doesn't feel the same. I'm actually considering selling and moving elsewhere, Not because they won, but because the space holds too many violated boundaries now. Ashley and I are still together. She's been incredible through all of this, joking that if I can survive my family, I can survive anything. Last week, I got a letter from my grandmother, the one who'd left that voicemail about my grandfather spinning in his grave. She apologized, saying she'd finally heard the full story and was appalled by her son's behavior. She shared that Julius had pulled similar stunts with his siblings decades ago, which is why he's estranged from most of them. Patterns, it seems, repeat through generations unless someone breaks them. I'm in therapy now, not because I'm unstable like my parents claimed, but because untangling a lifetime of manipulation takes professional help. My therapist has helped me see that what I experienced wasn't just boundary crossing but a form of abuse that had been normalized in our family for generations. Some days I wonder if I could have handled it differently. Should I have just let Lila stay for a few months? Would that have been easier? But then I remember the moving truck, the changed locks, the systematic attempt to destroy my reputation when I said no. And I realized that giving in wouldn't have solved anything. It would have just delayed the inevitable confrontation and established that my boundaries were negotiable. My home is peaceful now. My plants are thriving under my own care. My office is back to being my office. And sometimes, in the quiet moments, I feel something I hadn't felt in years around my family. Safe. That safety, that peace, that autonomy, it was worth every lost relationship, every harsh word, every legal fee. Because at the end of the day, family that doesn't respect you isn't really family at all. They're just people who happen to share your DNA while trying to control your life. And I'm done being controlled.